The room was thick with tension as the family gathered for the reading of the will. Expensive perfumes mingled with the scent of old leather and polished wood in the opulent study. Crystal decanters caught the light, their contents untouched as everyone waited with bated breath. This was the moment they'd all been anticipating and dreading since the passing of billionaire tycoon Maxwell Thornton. Before we begin, please hit the like button. It really helps our channel grow. Thank you, and let's jump right in. The lawyer, a stern-faced man in an impeccable suit, cleared his throat. The rustle of papers seemed deafening in the silence. "We are gathered here today to read the last will and testament of Maxwell Thornton," he began, his voice echoing off the mahogany-paneled walls. Eyes darted around the room, sizing up the competition. There was Elizabeth, Maxwell's trophy wife, her diamond necklace glittering as she dabbed at non-existent tears. Roger, the eldest son, sat ramrod straight, his jaw clenched tight. Nearby, his sister Vivian fidgeted with her Hermes scarf, while their younger half-brother Charlie slouched in his chair, trying to appear disinterested. The lawyer continued, "Mr. Thornton's estate is valued at approximately $2.7 billion, including multiple properties, investment portfolios, and several priceless art collections." A collective intake of breath filled the room. The stakes were astronomical, and everyone present knew it. Who would walk away with the lion's share of this vast fortune? "To my beloved wife Elizabeth," the lawyer read, and the woman in question sat up straighter, a triumphant gleam in her eye. "I leave my collection of vintage wines valued at $500,000. Elizabeth's face fell. $500,000 was a pittance compared to what she'd been expecting. She opened her mouth to protest, but the lawyer had already moved on. "To my son Roger, I bequeath my summer home in the Hamptons and its contents, valued at $12 million. Roger nodded curtly, but his white-knuckled grip on the armchair betrayed his disappointment. He'd been running the family business for years. Surely he deserved more. "To my daughter Vivian, I leave my collection of rare books and first editions valued at $3 million. Vivian's eyes widened in shock. She'd always loved those books, but she'd been counting on so much more. How was she supposed to maintain her lavish lifestyle on mere millions? "And to my youngest son, Charlie," the lawyer paused, and everyone leaned forward slightly. Charlie had always been the black sheep of the family, more interested in his music than the family business. What could Maxwell have left him? "I leave my vintage car collection, valued at $8 million. Charlie actually smiled, the first genuine emotion anyone had shown. He'd always loved those cars, even if he'd never admitted it to his father. The tension in the room ratcheted up another notch. So far, barely $25 million of the massive fortune had been allocated. Where was the rest going? The lawyer cleared his throat again, clearly building up to something. And now, for the disposition of the remaining assets, including Thornton Industries and all associated holdings, you could have heard a pin drop in that moment. This was it, the big reveal they'd all been waiting for. "I leave the entirety of my remaining fortune, valued at approximately $675 billion to..." The pause seemed to stretch for an eternity. Elizabeth leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with greed. Roger's knuckles turned white as he gripped the chair. Vivian held her breath, and even Charlie sat up straight. "My faithful butler, Jenkins." The collective gasp that followed was audible. All eyes turned to the corner of the room where Jenkins stood, as always silent and unobtrusive. The elderly man's eyes widened in shock, the only break in his usually impeccable composure. "What?" Elizabeth shrieked, leaping to her feet. "This is preposterous. I demand a recount." Roger's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. "There must be some mistake," he growled. "I've given my life to this company." Vivian burst into tears while Charlie just sat there, stunned into silence. The lawyer raised his hand for quiet, then continued reading. "I know this comes as a shock to you all, but Jenkins has been more than a butler. He has been my confidant, my friend, and the most loyal person I've ever known. He has seen me at my worst and my best, and never once wavered in his dedication." Jenkins stood there, still as a statue, as the lawyer read on. "To my family, I leave this final message. True wealth isn't measured in dollars and cents, but in the impact we have on others. Jenkins understood this better than any of you. He has my permission to use this fortune as he sees fit. to continue the charitable works we discussed in secret to help those truly in need. The room erupted into chaos. Elizabeth was screaming about contesting the will, Roger was threatening lawsuits, and Vivian had collapsed into hysterical sobs. Only Charlie remained quiet, a thoughtful look on his face as he watched Jenkins. The butler finally moved, walking slowly to the center of the room. "If I may," he said, his voice quiet but firm. The family fell silent, staring at him with a mixture of shock and resentment. "Mr. Thornton and I did indeed have many discussions about the future of his fortune," Jenkins began, "and while I am honored by his trust in me, I believe there is more to his plan than meets the eye." He turned to face each family member in turn. "Ms. Elizabeth, your wine collection includes several extremely rare vintages that Mr. Thornton acquired specifically for their investment potential. Properly managed, they could triple in value over the next decade." Elizabeth's mouth opened and closed wordlessly as Jenkins continued. "Mr. Roger, the Hamptons property includes several acres of undeveloped land. Mr. Thornton always said it had potential for a world-class resort." Roger's eyes widened as the possibilities began to dawn on him. "Ms. Vivian, those first editions include several previously unknown manuscripts that could revolutionize literary scholarship. And Mr. Charlie," Jenkins turned to the youngest, "those vintage cars aren't just for show. Mr. Thornton knew of your passion for engineering. He believed you could use them as the basis for innovative new designs." The family stared at Jenkins in stunned silence as he went on. Mr. Thornton's final lesson wasn't just about the nature of wealth, it was about potential. He's given each of you the seeds of something greater, if you're willing to put in the work and creativity to make it grow. Jenkins straightened his jacket. "As for the main fortune, I intend to use it to establish a foundation in Mr. Thornton's name. This foundation will focus on education, innovation, and community development. And I would like to invite each of you to be part of its board." The silence that followed was profound. The anger and resentment that had filled the room moments before had been replaced by something else. A mixture of shock, dawning understanding, and perhaps even a glimmer of respect. Charlie was the first to speak. "I'm in," he said quietly. "Dad always did like his object lessons. Might as well see this one through." Slowly, hesitantly, the others began to nod. Even Elizabeth, after a long moment, gave a grudging nod of assent. As the family began to discuss the possibilities, the lawyer quietly slipped out of the room. He paused in the hallway, looking back at the closed door with a small smile. "Well played, old friend," he murmured. "Well played indeed." In that opulent study, surrounded by the trappings of material wealth, Maxwell Thornton had managed to leave behind something far more valuable, a legacy of wisdom, potential, and the challenge to be better. It wasn't the inheritance anyone had expected, but it was one that would resonate for generations to come. The gasps of shock that had filled the room earlier had transformed into something else, the intake of breath that comes with new possibilities, with the dawn of understanding. Maxwell Thornton's true wealth, it seemed, lay not in his billions, but in his ability to transform his family even from beyond the grave. As the sun began to set outside the mansion's windows, casting long shadows across priceless antiques and family portraits, a new chapter was beginning for the Thornton family. The reading of the will had indeed left them all gasping, but not for the reasons they'd expected. In death, as in life, Maxwell Thornton had managed to surprise them all, leaving behind not just a fortune, but a challenge, a lesson, and perhaps a chance at redemption. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and share it with others. And if you'd love more inspiring stories, check out our playlist for more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.